that we put across, you will see my signature in there. So anybody should feel free to contact me on my email. Yes, when you get those kind of event registration and event emails, just feel free. If you have any questions for the community or anything you want to add up, we take feedback as well. So feel free to get back to me on email as well when you see those event uh, communications. So yes, Godfred, thank you very much. I also want to ask if there is any
Thank you
other
for answering.
questions. All right, okay. So our next speaker just who should be joining us 2 o'clock, but I think I'm trying to finalize with Ronald. Sorry, I'm trying to finalize with him. I can't see him online though. So
Yep.
Ronald, sorry, I just mentioned your name. Okay.
I'm fully up.
Yes, yes, yes. So we are using this time to make the section interactive. I mean, I can see we have some new members joining us. So if there is any questions, attendees, you would want us to hear you. The floor is yours. Uh, you can just ask the questions as we wait for our last speaker of the day. So kindly feel free to ask your questions. Yes. So Joseph, how is the section going for you so far? Oh, your mic is muted. Joseph, your mic is muted.
Yeah, I was saying I'm enjoying it, so it's lovely.
Yes, okay. So, in fact, all the attendees today have won themselves a T-shirt, a Microsoft Bootcamp T-shirt. So, after the event, please do contact me. I would also contact you, and then we arrange as to how you can pick it up. Yes, and I would love to see you in person on our next and upcoming event, which is the Microsoft our summit to celebrate the community. So it's just the next Saturday. Next Saturday. So spread the message. It will be awesome to have you in person here at the CIBS campus. So do pass by if you have the time. Else you can also join us online, right? So let me just conclude with the last speaker. I'll just a minute so he can start his section. Okay, so I'm still waiting for the confirmation. We will be joined by Christos very soon, so kindly bear with us. The time was actually 2:10, so kindly bear with us. He will be joining us soon. So before he even joins us, I would like to give some introduction about our last speaker in the person of Christos Matskas. Christos is a senior program manager at Microsoft, and he is an MVP, Microsoft MVP as well, and he has a lot, 5 years and over experience at Microsoft. When he talks about the industry experience, then he has a lot of years of couple of decade and more experience in the industry. So we will be joined by an in-depth person who has a lot to share for us. So I mean, get yourself ready for another insightful section. He will be joining us very soon. Just a minute. I will be confirming that. Sorry, my mic was muted. Welcome, welcome virtually to Ghana. Your mic is muted. Your mic is muted.
It is indeed. It's too early in the morning. It's too early in the morning, my friend. That's why.
Okay. Okay, we are happy to see you, and I am privileged and honored to host you on our .NET Bootcamp. In fact, the community organizers, everybody is happy to see you, to have you join us and share the wonderful experience. As I was saying, I was just telling the attendees, I mean, some are just still taking some stretch, so they will join us. They were saying that they are happy to hear Microsoft's staff talking to the community. They are very much grateful, and they are waiting for an insightful section. And I have promised them, yes, indeed, it's going to be very insightful, as the other three speakers have been insightful. The day has been very good. Yes, it's been very smooth. So yes, let me do the introduction again before you take over. Yes, so I'm joined by the senior program manager at Microsoft, and it's not such an easy position to be a senior program manager at Microsoft. So today, I mean, it feels like a birthday. I mean, yes, I'm very happy to be joined by such mentors who are willing to share their knowledge and experience for the community. I mean, it's a pleasure for us. It's a pleasure for you to share your weekend with us. And I mean, we are very, very much grateful to host you here in Ghana. and online as well. The community appreciates you very, very well. So without much ado, I think we are good with time. So you can take the platform, please.
Perfect. Thank you. And the privilege is all mine, my friends. It's great to be here. It's great to have the opportunity to talk to you about security, identity, and everything we do. And if you have any questions as we go through the presentation or as I go through the demos, then please feel free to interrupt me. There's no worries about interrupting me, which is great. I'm here to actually learn from you rather than telling you what you should be doing. So I work at the Microsoft Identity division, and my main concern is about helping developers write more secure software, whether that's through authenticating users in a nice, scalable and secure way, or whether that's through accessing resources, whether that's APIs or Azure resources or Azure services. We try to help you understand what the perils are, what the possible risks of not doing it right, and how to do it right. So let me just open my PowerPoint presentation because I have way too many presentations. Introduction. And we'll be doing demos as well as we go through. So there you go. That should be the one. And it's open. And let me share that. Start the presentation. Oh, actually, I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry, it's only 7 a.m. here in the morning, so I'm just getting to grips with reality. Okay, so present. There you go. So now you should be able to see my screen. And we've already done the introduction of myself. I matched the picture, so I am who I say I am. And if you like what you hear today, if you like what you see today, and if you want to learn more about security and identity and how it all fits in end-to-end scenarios, then we do have a bi-weekly or twice weekly stream on Twitch, which also ends up on YouTube. And you can jump on Tuesday or Friday. Your local time should be around 5 or 4 p.m. UK time or GMT. And it's called the 4 to 5 show, where we invite guests from the community. We invite MVPs, we invite engineering people, we invite other people from the Microsoft division to talk about how to build secure software. And we do everything. We do .NET, we do Python, we do JavaScript, everything that the community needs to know about. So if you want to learn more, then make sure to follow us there. Now, I've been in the industry for quite a while, and I've seen quite a few things. In fact, I've worked with hundreds of customers in my capacity at Microsoft, and I worked as a consultant before joining Microsoft. And trust me, getting identity, well, it's a tricky thing. Getting identity to work properly, it's hard. I've done it myself. Back in 2007, when I was assigned to a project, I thought it would be a great idea to go and build my own identity system. This is where you create an interface for users to sign in, and they have to provide a username and a password, usually an email and a password. And you might think that this is all you have to do. You know, you just have to take that information, store it somewhere, and when the user comes back, then you need to match that input to your stored credentials, and lo and behold, you're done. Unfortunately, this is the thinking behind many solutions out there. And the problem is that identity spans way beyond just the username and password. We have multi-factor authentication. If you ever had to implement that yourselves, then you know that it is quite tricky to do. You need an identity, you need an email service, you need a texting service, a mobile service to allow you to do one-time passwords, and all these things that add a lot of complexity. And most people don't get it right. I mean, most people don't understand the difference between encrypting and hashing, right? So how can we expect developers to do that right? And then there are a lot more other challenges. Let's say you have a super robust username and password database, which is great, but now you have another solution in your company that somebody else needs to use, and they have to create their own username and password database. And then there's another one, and before you know it, you got hundreds of these databases. And the problem there is that you don't have a central way of managing these credentials. So there are instances where people leave companies and they go to work for somewhere else, and they still have access to their old production systems because their username and passwords were never taken down or they were never deleted from the database. So you can see how this becomes a bigger problem. And as I said, many companies don't get it right. In fact, I don't know if you have heard of Troy Hunt and if you had a chance to see his talks or read his blogs, but he also runs a website called Have I Been Pwned? And on that website, he uploads any security dump, any hacked database that makes it to the public domain. If when the Sony website was hacked and they managed to retrieve the database, he uploaded up there. And there's a number of companies. It's not just the big companies, it's the small companies. It's not technology companies. It's like food companies, like Domino's or whatever. And just goes to show that throughout the industry, anything that you have in the public domain actually becomes a target. It doesn't matter what you do or how you do it. Cybercrime is growing significantly. They expect for in 2021 it will reach about $7 billion in damages. That's about $3.8 million per company in damages when it comes to cyber attacks. And they're getting clever as well, right? The way that attackers are working these days are far different to what they were doing 10 or 15 years ago. Long gone are the zero-day attacks, right? They don't want to take over the operating system. They don't want to hack the browser. What they will do is they will use simple ways, like they will scan a GitHub for credentials. And you know how many of these credentials make it to GitHub, right? And they will scan GitHub for public keys or SSH keys, SSL keys. They will actually try to find gaps in your application rather than trying to hack the underlying operating system, because it is far easier. And sometimes they will even go down the route of social engineering, where they will reach out to employees to find information. So we want to eliminate access to passwords. We want to eliminate the need to manage those passwords, because you don't want to be one of the 11 billion accounts that have been made public through the Have I Been Pwned website. By the way, if you're not using that website, I would urge you to go and sign up, because you get alerts every time your email account makes it into one of these hacks, right? And you'll be surprised. Go and try it out. So that sounds like a scary proposition. Right now, I've said to you, do not do it. Do not ever do it. You don't want to write your own identity system, because, to be honest, it's hard. It's extremely hard. If you see, for example, how Azure Active Directory is implemented, then you know that there are maybe tens of different services that are brought together to provide you with a robust, scalable solution. So what I'm saying here is, I don't want you to write your own database for managing your credentials. I want you to use an identity service provider. Now, ideally, you're using Azure Active Directory, because if you are a .NET developer, if you are an Azure developer, you already have Azure Active Directory for free. It is available to you through your Azure subscription. If you have Microsoft 365, then that is also another way for you to get access to your Azure Active Directory. So there are different ways of doing that. But the point here is that you as a developer don't ever have to think about scalability or security or reliability, because Azure Active Directory is there to do it for you. For example, one of these numbers here that actually blows my mind is the 30 billion authentication that happen daily on Azure Active Directory, right? This is an insane amount of authentication. So you might say, well, Chris, my company doesn't have more than 100 users. That's perfect. You can start with one user, then you can add 100 users, and then you can add tens of thousands of users, and you don't have to change anything in your implementation, especially as a developer, because that's the important bit. So if you were sitting at your desk and your manager comes and says, well, Michael, I want you to go and add sign-in to our website. I want our users to be able to go and sign in, and sometimes not even sign in, like single sign-on. And I want you to implement that and make it secure. So the first question you might have is, do we already have something out there that we can use? And as I said, if you're already using Office or if you're already using Azure, then Azure Active Directory is there for you. It's just sitting there to be used. The next question, obviously, as you go through your research, is how easy it is to get started and build authentication into my application. For greenfield projects, for things that are brand new, like if you do .NET new, then I will show you that it takes a couple of seconds to set everything up. for brownfield projects where you have existing solutions and you need to migrate them into a more robust solution, then again, it takes very little code. All in all, in most cases, it's a few lines of code. If you are in JavaScript, maybe that's 50 lines of code. If you're in .NET, maybe that's like 10 lines of code altogether, but it's super easy to get started. Does it integrate well with my platform and language? Yeah, I mean, we're doing .NET, so obviously it's first party and it's very, very well supported. But we even support Java and Node and Python and JavaScript. So whether you're building a SPA with a .NET API, whether you're building a .NET web app with the latest MVC or Razor Pages, they're all supported. And Visual Studio is designed to work with that. Visual Studio Code will add some capabilities there to allow you to interact with Azure Active Directory. So you as a developer, in effect, don't have to do much. But the thing that I really like about Microsoft Identity, and the thing I really like about delegating that responsibility to a service, is that you get a lot of advanced security capabilities out of the box. Like I said, MFA, it sounds great and everybody should be using MFA. I hope you're using MFA. But imagine if you had to implement MFA for your solution yourself. You have so many dependencies, you have to do so many checks. You have to, for example, think, how am I going to send text messages and how am I going to make sure that if a text message gets intercepted, it's not going to compromise the solution. You get things that are coming into Azure Active Directory as well, like continuous access evaluation. How can I make sure that when somebody gets an access token, it's not going to be abused, or is not going to be used when that person should not have access to that access token? For example, I sign into my Outlook in the morning, which is awesome. Then my manager calls me and says, Chris, it's been great working with you. You're fired, right? At that point, I already have an access token to my Outlook. I have access to all my emails, even though I have been fired. So continuous access evaluation is something that we're implementing that will allow my enterprise to say, well, Christos is gone, he shouldn't have any access. So the next time I go to Outlook to check for my emails, the identity platform will check for that access and will continuously assess that. And then if I'm not supposed to have access anymore, it will actually remove access from all my emails. And that's something that you don't have to worry about implementing yourselves. And then, there are other things like token binding. There's some super advanced stuff that you don't have to worry about. So there you go. You go from having to create a database to manage your credentials to actually having somebody else do that for you. So in effect, all you have to do is just a couple of things, and we'll actually see them in action. So if I have convinced you that this is the easiest way to go around implementing identity, then it's because it is. And you only need two things when it comes to implementing identity in your application. You need an Azure Active Directory app registration. This is where you go into Azure Active Directory, and we'll do one as well. And you show your intent. You say, I want to use Azure Active Directory to sign in my users. And that actually creates a one-to-one mapping between your application and Azure Active Directory. And you can do that in the portal, or you can do it through Graph, or you can do it through an API, you can do it through PowerShell. It's totally down to you how you want to do it. In fact, at Build, we showcased the possibility to register an app registration via Azure.NET Notebooks, via .NET Notebooks, right? So you can use a .NET Notebook that Mariana Gaga has done a fantastic job with the rest of the PM team there. You can use a .NET Notebook to write .NET to automate the app registration. So many different ways to automate that. With the app registration in Azure Active Directory, you're done. Then the next thing that you have to do is actually write a little bit of code. And it's a combination of a set of config settings, and then the library. From a library perspective, you can use MSAL, the Microsoft Authentication Library, which is the official and fully supported library, or you can bring your own OpenID Connect and OAuth 2 libraries. So for example, if you already have a mature library that you want to use, because Azure Active Directory is built on top of open standards, any OIDC and OAuth 2 compliant library works with our endpoints, which is great. And in some cases, you might have to go back to Azure Active Directory and say, you know what, I don't only want to sign in my users, but I also want to access my APIs securely, right? So your web app could be calling an API or an Azure function. and you want to do that securely by passing an access token. So your API validates that the incoming token is correct, it came from the right person, and that the right, or from the right application, and that the person that has signed in also has the right permissions or claims to actually access the API. So you can see how we're starting to think about the security model end to end. And I did say that we support a lot of different identity scenarios. So we have work and school accounts. So this is your @Contoso, @Microsoft, @your work account. When you go in and you access your line of business applications from the office or from home. Then you have MSA accounts, which we recently announced that they went fully passwordless, so you don't have to worry about passwords anymore. And then you can also use these for authenticating. Maybe you're writing an application that needs to sign in users to their OneDrive to store some data, right? It's a mobile app, but at the same time, it still needs to authenticate the user and give them access to their OneDrive. And using MSA and Graph, this becomes extremely easy. I don't know if any of you has worked with OneDrive before or SkyDrive back in the day, but those libraries were extremely painful and had their own kind of login process, and it didn't tie well with everything else. Now everything is tied under the Graph. And finally, you might be building an application that needs to sign in external users, right? Maybe you're the next Walmart, or maybe you're the next Coca-Cola, or maybe you're the next Nike, and you want people to come into your website and they need to sign up and sign in and buy stuff. These accounts still need to be managed. They're not at Nike.com, they're at Gmail or at Outlook. And these accounts are also supported by the Microsoft Identity Platform. So depending on what you want to do, we can provide you with full support across the board. And finally, as I said, everything is built on top of open standards. So I don't know if you've heard of any of these, like OAuth 2 or OpenID Connect or SAML or whatever, but the whole point is that we support you there fully. And without further ado, we can actually go and do a demo. I can do JavaScript or I can do .NET. I think .NET is probably more fun, but let's say that you are in Azure Active Directory. We'll do 2 demos. Yeah, there you go. A whammy, 2 in 1. You're inside your Azure Active Directory. And by the way, if you don't have an Azure Active Directory, if you want to play around, there is a fantastic Microsoft developer program. So Microsoft 365 developer program. And if you go in this page over here, you can sign up, you can join the program, and you get a full P1 Azure Active Directory. You also get some sample data, you get calendar, you get SharePoint, you get OneDrive, and this actually allows you to play around and do all the things that you want to do without any restrictions from your enterprise. Because sometimes enterprise tenants are locked down, like the Microsoft tenant is super locked down. So certain permissions that need to be, certain elevated permissions, like I want to access everybody's calendar in my enterprise. Can you imagine being able to do that? I can look at Scott Guthrie's calendar. So, because you can abuse that, there's a lockdown. So in many scenarios, you might be working on a proof of concept, or you might be building an application that requires those elevated permissions, and you can't do it. So a Microsoft 365 developer program is totally free. You don't have to put a credit card or anything else. It gives you with a full Azure Active Directory tenant. It gives you sample data, and it also allows you to use any elevated permissions you want. And it's perpetually free. So as long as you use it once every 90 days, then it will renew automatically forever. So it doesn't expire ever, which is brilliant. So we're inside our Azure Active Directory, and most developers will only care about app registrations, because remember we talked about app registrations and how we need to create one so we can show our intent. You can see I've done lots of different demos here. I've got all these random things. So then we're going to create a new registration, and we'll call it JS demo Saturday. And I want to sign in users on my tenant. And you can see here you can have multi-tenant ones. You can add MSA if you want to. So let's register this application. So I'm a total newbie. I don't know what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to go to Quick Start. And this is very nice, actually, if you want to do the reverse, right? I don't know what code I'm writing or what I need to do and how it will run. And then here you can decide what kind of application you're building. It can be a web app. It can be a mobile application. It can be, this is new, by the way. It can be a single page app. or it can be a desktop application like a Node.js process, or maybe a .NET Core console application. And the whole point there is that it allows you to quickly say, you know what, I want to build, let's say JavaScript 1, and we're going to use the modern auth code flow. No framework, so no Angular or anything else, just the vanilla stuff. And then here it says, you know what, you have Node.js installed on your machine, which I have. You need Visual Studio Code or some other editor, and you need an Azure subscription. Not the Azure subscription per se, but an Azure Active Directory subscription. So here we're gonna say we need to do some changes, and we'll cover these in a second. But for now, we'll let the quick start do them for me. And now I'm just going to download the code, and that's the code over there. I'm going to open the file. I'm gonna copy that file into my demos, and then we're gonna open it and play. And then I'll show you the code in there. I want to paste. Okie dokie. And then I'm going to bring my console up so everybody can see it. And then we're going to change directory to where we downloaded our latest one. It's here, and then I'm going to open it in code. Opening. There you go. So let's see what we have here. It's a little bit, probably too many files, but it's fine. We have the server JS, which is our node process that's running everything. And then we have the solution, which is under app. And under app, we have a config. Remember we talked about the config? So here we're saying we're going to be using the MSAL library, and we're going to authenticate against our tenant. So this is where the authority comes. We're saying, I'm going to use my tenant to sign in. I'm using this client ID. This client ID actually matches the client ID here. So if we do an overview, that client ID, E0D, I'll make this bigger so you guys can see that. That's way too big. Here, matches that down here. And then we're saying, when I sign in, I want my tokens to be sent back to this URL. Now, this is very important because if this one doesn't match my application configuration here under authentication, then it's not going to work. And that's it. I mean, all we have to do now is npm install. And then npm start, I think. And it's already listening on port 3000. So if we navigate that URL, we should be able to sign in. So I can sign in here. It's the first time I'm using the application, so it will actually ask me which account I want to use, and I need to use my one because I'm using my tenant. It's not multi-tenanted. And then here it says, do you want to consent to this application to access your profile? So it's going to read my basic information from Graph to bring my name and some other information here. So I can say accept. Now I am signed in. There you go. I can see my profile. And this is the information I have on my test tenant. So nothing private or nothing sensitive. In fact, if I was running this demo on my Microsoft tenant, it would not let me do this. So not only do I get access to my tenant and signing in, but I can also call Graph and get access to my emails. The nice thing about the Microsoft Identity Platform is that it uses the consent framework, which means that every time you need to ask the user for their consent for accessing their email or accessing their OneDrive, you as a developer have to ask that upfront. You need to ask for it, and then the user has to consent. So if I am saying, well, wait a minute, why is this application that is supposed to show my calendar stuff is trying to access my OneDrive pictures, right? I'm not consent. So the application needs to be able to handle the lack of consent, and might say, well, you can't see your data if you don't want to consent. And then it creates a bit of a trust between the user and the developer. I have to ask for what I need, and the developer needs, the user needs to see that and consent to it before I access it, which is great. So I will say, yes, I accept, and I'm going to get some random emails that are populated in my test tenant. There you go. Now, if we go back into the code, you'll see that we have the config, which is 3 lines, right? You can ignore the cache and you can ignore the logging. I mean, you shouldn't ignore them, but technically our application would run even without the cache and the system configuration there. And then we have an auth pop-up. This is what was presented to us when we signed in. And in here, a few things happening. You might think there's a lot of code, but technically we're instantiating an MSAL public client, and it's public because it's a JavaScript app, so everybody can access it and see it. So here, and then we do a sign-in. Now check this out. The sign-in is actually 2 lines of code. And then if we do the try catch, then okay, we have 2 more lines. So the sign-in is actually just 2 lines of code, and then when we sign in, we handle the response, and the response technically changes the UI to say, well, welcome, Christos. Thank you for signing in. And then the sign out is even more exciting. It's just like, you know, a little bit of config here, and then we're just pass that into 1 line of code. So as you can see, to sign in and sign out, it literally takes 10 lines of code. And then if you need to get a token, which we did for accessing details such as the profile or the email, there's a function here, and there's a certain pattern in MSAL, the Microsoft Authentication Library, that we try to get a token silently because the user may have already a token in the cache. If that fails, we need to catch that error message, and it will be a very specific error message. And then here it says, you know, we need to interact with the user. We need to present them with an option to re-authenticate. And this is where the token pop-up comes in. Then we either consent or we re-authenticate, and then we get the token back and we pass it to whatever function we need to do. So again, maybe 10 lines of code, but this function allows you to get a token for everything. You can get a token for accessing your storage account. You can get a token for accessing your graph. You can get a token for accessing an API. It's perfect. So very few lines of code. And then everything else is about changing the UI or getting data from graph. But as you can see, you know, technically the sign in and the sign out is very few lines of code. But you know what? I think .NET can do better. Do you think .NET can do better? I think .NET can do better. So let's stop this one and let's do a .NET solution. So here I'm going to come out. Any questions so far? I've been talking for the last 20 minutes, so I want to make sure that.
Okay. So just a quick one. You know, when you started, you said that we can subscribe to certain sites.
Yes.
Yes. So okay, I wanted to know which particular site.
I'll put it on the chat over here so you guys can go and do it. Do I have access to the chat? Is there a chat?
For some reason we are having some issue with the chat.
Okay.
But you can share it. Just share it after the event for.
Yeah. So yeah, I can do that. You know what? I can put it on LinkedIn. We already have a chat on LinkedIn, so you can share it from there. How about that? Will that work?
Yeah. Yes. That's okay.
There you go. Boom. Or you can Google for Microsoft 365 developer program, and it's exactly the same. So yes, please go and sign up. It's free for everyone, so you don't have to pay. You don't need a credit card. You don't need anything. It's available everywhere for everyone. There you go. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was actually talking of the site that you said in case we get hacked from GitHub, from like those suspicious sites when we get.
Have I been pawned?
Oh, have I been pawned? Yes. It is this one. You're absolutely right.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, that's interesting. Ad blocker detected. What are you talking about? This is not the right website. Well, this is not right. I don't think that Troy would ever block. Have I been pawned? Let's see. I wonder if it's just redirected to. Yeah, you know what? It redirected to a different website.
Yeah.
Interesting. So that's the one. Let me put it on the on LinkedIn as well, so you can share with everyone, please. So this is a fantastic website because, again, as I said, you can put your email address. Have I been pawned? Let's see. I have quite a few, actually. Oh, no. Check this out. 13 data breaches.
Wow.
Yeah. So in fact, it will tell you which ones they were. and then you can go and change your account. Now, technically, you shouldn't really care about. I mean, Have I Been Pawned is great because it shows that sites are not secure, which is not great. It's sad actually when you think about it. But at the same time, you should be using a tool like a password manager tool. Please, if you don't use password manager tools, then go and use one. I use what's mine? Mine is called what's it called? Bitwarden, which is free. It's available on every device. It's available for desktop. It's available for your browser. It's available on your phone. And I have over 700 passwords. So every time I sign into a new website to buy something or to create an account, I create a unique password. And my passwords are usually between 40 and 60 characters long, unless the website has restrictions.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know my passwords. And if that tool breaks, then I am totally screwed. But this is also great, but if you try to paste a 40-digit password into a website and it says it's too long or it has special characters and we don't like them, then this is something that you should worry about, because technically if they are hashing their passwords correctly, it doesn't really matter what characters there are there, because any character can be hashed into a hash, and the hash will be something that the developers need to store. And therefore, if they say, well, in fact, some sites will actually truncate your password without telling you. So they might only have a limit of 20. They won't tell you. You put a 24-digit password, they will truncate it, and then you try to sign in and it doesn't work. So it's awful. A lot of these things come to light when you do things outside the norm, like you go beyond the 8 characters and you try to do different permutations. So my passwords here, you can go and create a new one, and you can say, you know what, create a new password for me, and you can say how long do you want it to be, and then look, I don't even care, right? I don't even remember my passwords, which is great. So even if your account ends up in one of these things, then the whole point for the attackers is to get access to credentials so they can go and attack other sites. And you might say, well, it doesn't really matter if somebody has my Facebook account. Well, this is the deal here. They would use these accounts to imitate you. They will pretend that they're you, and then they might say, well, you know what? I was traveling and I got robbed, and I lost my wallet and I need emergency cash. Please send me some money. And your friends and your family will rush into your support and help. And they were making, in fact, I think it was in 2018, they made $200 million out of these scams. So the fact that you sign into your Netflix with the same account that you use on Facebook, and then maybe one of these sites ends up making the news. The problem there is that the attackers will try to automatically start testing your account against multiple websites, and then they will use those accounts to make money. So and sometimes it's not about even making money. Sometimes it's, I got your credentials to your Azure subscription, so now I'm gonna spin up 1,000 VMs and start Bitcoin mining. So am I actually taking money off your bank account? Probably not. Or I mean, technically they are, because you have to pay for that subscription. But at the same time, they're using resources. Sometimes the attacks are about resources, and they're not about accessing your bank account or signing into your Netflix website, which I actually had happen to me. So that was my bad. Anyway, with that, I want to go and do some .NET fun stuff, right? So I hope you're using .NET, and in fact, .NET 6 is just around the corner, which is super exciting. I hope everyone has signed up to the conference.
Yeah, just a minute. Yes, I think Ronald wanted to ask a question.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Ronald. Okay, maybe you can go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. Let me know if there are any questions, and happy to answer them. Right. I know some people might be shy, so if you want to hit me on Twitter, or if you want to hit me on LinkedIn, then feel free to do so, or directly email to 45show@microsoft.com. We're always there to ask and answer questions, right? So here we're gonna do a .NET project. So I think I have .NET 6 here, .NET Dastas version, because I like to play with the latest and greatest, and we're just around the corner. I think I'm a little bit behind because RC1 was released last week, or the 14th of September, so I'm slightly behind the curve, but it should still work. And .NET has made it extremely easy to work with identity. In fact, it takes one line of code to add identity into your web apps, which is insane. Same for web APIs. So let's actually see it in action, because when I say one line, people are like, no way. No way identity is so easy. Well, my friends, it is. So we're going to create a new web app, right? .NET new web app. And then we'll say --auth because we want to add authentication. And then we'll say single org. Here you can have different options. You can have single org, you can have multi-tenant apps, you can have B2C if you want to use external accounts. And we're going to use single org for now because we're working with a test tenant, so it makes our life a lot easier. And with that, it's going to create a web app. I think it's a Razor Pages web app, and it will add the identity for us. So if oh God, I forgot to give it a name. So it's at the root of my projects. I am a Muppet. Right, so let's give it a name, and then I'll have to go and clear out everything up. So N or O, name or output. And then let's put a folder there. Let's call it UG demo. Oh, I need to clear my my directory now. Okay. And then let's change the directory into that. And then let's open it in code and see what we have. This is a .NET 6 app, and we have our CS Prods that has a couple of libraries. You notice that we don't reference Microsoft Identity.client or the old MSAL names. We have a new library called the Microsoft Identity.web. It is built on top of MSAL, so it's not a whole new thing. It is built on top of MSAL. Everything is using MSAL, the Microsoft Authentication libraries. But this one has been designed to make our life a lot easier. So Microsoft Identity.web is the new library, the one that adds one line of code. Then there's a UI that manages the sign in and the sign out. When you in the application you say I want to sign in, it redirects to that page automatically for you. And then there are some token libraries that you might want to use later on if you want to interact with your tokens. But usually at this point you might know one because we're just starting out. In the app settings, we have a couple of things. We have the Azure Active Directory settings, and this is what we need to configure on Azure Active Directory to match between the two, right? Remember we said that? And then in the code, we have our, it's line 11 is where the magic happens. This is where we add, and you notice that this is the new top level statement, so there's no class here. So here, let's go and you can use that, which is like 2 lines of code, but then it will be like, oh, Chris, you lied to me. You said it was going to be 1 line of code. So we can do better. You can keep it as that, or you can say Microsoft, Microsoft, so it's use, isn't it? Oh, it's add Microsoft, I don't want to do that. Was it before? Add Microsoft Identity Web App Authentication, yeah, so it should be. I don't know why it's slow this morning. You know what, IntelliSense, sometimes it's a hit and miss on this one. And I know why it's not working, because OmniSharp is dead. Control-Shift-P, let's restart OmniSharp. As you can see here, we have to restart OmniSharp all the time. There you go. Sometimes working without IntelliSense is a little bit of a bummer, right? So hopefully OmniSharp is there for us. Add Microsoft Identity, yes. Now we have some IntelliSense. Microsoft, there you go. So much easier. And then we'll just pass the configuration. Oh, it's builder configuration, isn't it? So in effect, what we're doing here is we're saying, I want my application to sign in my users, and this is how we wire it up. And then down here, we have the add authentication and add authorization. So 1 line, 2 lines, and we have a default authorization policy that says, you know what, I want to sign in every user that comes into my application. And here's how we wire up the UI. There's not much there. I think that's all we need to do to run the application. However, we need to go and configure our app registration. So let's go and create one for us. So we'll need to create a new app registration, which this time is going to be for .NET. So we're not using the SPA, we're not using JavaScript. So it's UG demo. It doesn't matter what name we give it here. It's totally random, just for us to help. So we need the application or client ID. Let's go back to our application and put it there. In our settings. So that will be our client ID. And we need our tenant ID to tell which tenant we want to use for signing in. which is directory or tenant ID. You know, we're pretty good at being inconsistent with our naming. Then we need to give the fully qualified name. So here that will be cmatskas.onmicrosoft.com, and I can show you where this comes from. It can come from the overview. If I go to my dashboard, I went way too far out. In the overview, that's my primary domain name. That's all I need to do there, and I think that's it. Oh, you know what? We need to go back to our app registration and add the authentication component. So right now we said we're gonna use this for authenticating users, but we haven't said the app registration, how we're going to authenticate the users or what kind of app we're using. So that happens in the authentication tab. So here we're gonna say, I wanna add the platform, and it's a web app. So it's a server-side web app. And then in here for the redirect URI, this is when, as soon as I sign in my users in Azure Active Directory, because I get redirected there, and the Azure Active Directory needs to know where to send the user back. So if there's a mismatch, then it's not gonna work. So here we're gonna say HTTPS localhost 5001, because that's where Kestrel is running, and then sign in OIDC. Now you might say, well, where did this come from? This came from, so remember this one, sign in OIDC, configure. This one has come from our config. And you can change this to be something else you might want, or you can keep it as the default because that's the library has been wired up. So we have 5 lines of config, and let's save this one because if I don't, then it will fail. And then we have 1 line of code to wire up authentication. Should we see it in action? Will this work? So .NET build. I'm too confident. Who should have done .NET run? There you go. All succeeded. So .NET run. And this is going to run the application. And when we go to the application, it should prompt us for a sign-in. So the default policy says you cannot access this web app unless you sign in. We could change that to say I want my home page to be insecure or unauthenticated, and then I want everything else to be secure. So we click here, and remember, it's a consent. We need to consent. This is a brand new application. I haven't used this before as a user, so it says, do you want to consent for this application to access your data? I do want to do that, and that's it. That's all it took. You can see my name up here, which came from the token claims, and this is all secure. This is all it takes. And then you can do the same for APIs, you can do the same for everything else, which is fantastic. Any questions so far? No?
Yes. How about authenticating using the biometrics like fingerprint and...
yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, as a developer, I don't have to change a single line of code, which is awesome, right? In fact, this tenant actually asks for MFA if I haven't signed in a while, and it needs my phone, which I don't have my phone with me. Oh, wow. But you wouldn't configure that. In fact, it would be your IT admin that would configure all these things inside your Azure Active Directory tenant. So here, as part of the permissions, there will be things like conditional access, or there might be things like branding, or there might be things like advanced policies to force everyone to use MFA. So if you want to force people, if you want people to use FIDO keys to sign in, then that is part of the configuration, and that's part of the user enrollment in Azure Active Directory, not your responsibility as a developer. You as a developer, all you have to say is, I want to redirect my users to Azure Active Directory. Then Azure Active Directory is responsible for enforcing all these different policies. For example, you can have a policy that says you can only access the web app between 9 a.m. in the morning and 5 p.m. No other time. And you can only access it if you are in a European time zone, or you can only access it if you are geographically located somewhere, or you can only access it for certain devices. For example, if I try to sign into my HR web from, if I try to access my HR website at Microsoft from a browser, from a private window, it doesn't let me do that. It will say you're not allowed to do that. So, all these policies are enforced at the identity provider level, not you as a developer. You wouldn't have to change a single line of code if you wanted to enforce MFA or if you want to enable people to use FIDO keys, which is great. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Now let's go back to slides. We have a couple more slides to cover. Like let's see, we're going here. So we did the demo, which was great. We do say come as you are, right? We love you for the tools that you use and the languages that you're using and the tools that you use. So if you want to use Visual Studio Code, awesome. If you want to use Visual Studio, that's even better. If you want to use Visual Studio for Mac, perfect. If you want to use JetBrains Rider, that's also super good because you know what? We actually added support for Azure Active Directory in Rider. We work with the JetBrains team to do that because we want people to be successful using the tools that they love. And as you can see on this slide, the only Microsoft thing that we have is the identity component at the very top. Everything else is all the services that we support you to run with Azure Active Directory. So you can have apps running in DigitalOcean, you can have apps running on Netlify, you can build these solutions with IntelliJ or PyCharm, and you can use the language that you love and run them serverless, Kubernetes, bare metal. They all work with the Microsoft Identity Platform. So we want you to be secure. However, if you are in the Microsoft tenant, if you are in the Microsoft ecosystem, then you get some added benefits, like creating secretless apps that can access Azure resources without passing usernames and passwords, the ability for Visual Studio to authenticate against Azure and call a function without you having to do anything in terms of authentication other than using the Azure SDKs, for example. And also the fact that you can consume your data from the Power Tools and the Power Platform without, again, having to worry about how you're going to authenticate against this and how are these permissions going to be managed, because everything is managed by Microsoft Identity. And this is where we talk a little bit about external identities. And, up until this point, I've been doing demos where we've been showcasing, for example, organizational accounts. My test tenant is an organizational account, but there are very valid scenarios where you actually want to authenticate external users, or people may want to bring their own identities. Like I want to sign in with my Twitter account, or I want to sign in with my Twitch account. Any OpenID Connect provider is actually available to be used in the platform. So Azure Active Directory B2C allows you to build consumer-facing or customer-facing solutions, and it can be super complex. It's not just websites. It can be a website that calls an API or a mobile app that calls an API. And all these can be secured end-to-end. And that's what we want you to do. The added benefit of B2C is that it can fully customize the user experience. So you saw when I was signing into the previous demos that it was very Azure Active Directory feel and look, right? And you can change a few things like the logo of the company and some coloring, but you don't have the flexibility of B2C. In B2C, you can build sign-in pages or logout pages or sign-up pages that look exactly like your application. And the whole point there is to provide a consistent experience. So when your users come to your application, they don't get this kind of a disconnection of, oh, I'm being redirected somewhere else, and this is a random page I'm seeing here, or a web view, and then I have to go back to the app. This still happens, but the look and feel is very consistent to your application. You can change everything. And that allows you to have a much better experience. It also scales to your users' needs. So Azure Active Directory B2C is an Azure service that comes with 50,000 free monthly active users. That means that 50,000 users can sign in unlimited times in your web app for free. Once you hit a threshold, then there's like a scale of costs that come up with that. But the whole point again is that you as a developer never ever have to think about how am I going to scale my application and how it is going to work, whether I have one user or 10,000 users. Because if you are building your own identity database, then you have to think about this thing, right? You have to think about where am I going to store the data? How is the table going to scale, or the table is going to scale? How am I going to back up that database? Do I have a reliable disaster recovery and all that? All these are taken away from you. All you have to think about is grabbing the library, dumping it into your code, creating an app registration, and going at your business. And then we have added benefits like OpenID Connect compliance, SAML. So a lot of companies are bringing a lot of older applications into the platform, and they want to benefit from single sign-on, which is great. Like I don't ever have to sign in on my phone. I think I've signed in like last January, and all the apps work out of the box because All the apps are Microsoft, belong to the Microsoft tenant, like all my Office apps, my email, my Teams, automatically authenticates with single sign-on, and that's a great experience. Same on the browser. Every time I access SharePoint or my OneDrive, I don't have to actually sign in because single sign-on takes care of that. And you as a developer don't have to worry about how you're going to implement it because it is supported out of the box with the library. We talked a little bit about Microsoft Identity.web, which is a new library for everyone that is in the .NET ecosystem. If you are working with .NET Core and later, then this is what you can use to authenticate Blazor, Wasmor Server, Web Apps APIs, and gRPC services. I have a lot of demos on our GitHub where you can grab all these examples. We also have a lot of blog posts and videos that show you how to do it end-to-end. If you are using older versions of .NET, like the full .NET framework or prior to .NET Core 3.1, then you need to use the MSAL library, which adds a little bit more code, but you can still achieve everything that you saw today with a little bit of more code, but it supports all the other languages. And finally, if nothing of this works, or if you already have a mature OpenID Connect library, then that's great. For example, I was building a Next.js app the other day, and I thought I don't want to use, I don't want to rewrite the whole thing. I want to use an OpenID Connect library, and this, I think, Next Auth or something like that allows you to use multiple identity providers, one of them being Azure Active Directory. And I was able to sign in to Next with a few lines of code in my Next app using Azure Active Directory, which is great. Any library works as long as you have the right endpoints. And this is a little bit of comparison between the old and the new and what you had to do. But for people that are wondering, nothing is gone because, as I said, we did build Microsoft Identity.web on top of MSAL. So you still get access to the same components like the JWT bearer authentication. You can intercept tokens and enrich them and add more claims or retrieve claims, remove claims. You still have access to the views. So if you want to customize the view look and feel, you can do so. And you can still get access to the OpenID Connect library. So all these components are still available through NuGet packages, but we hide them behind Microsoft Identity.web. So if you just want to do authentication and maybe grab a token, that's the way to do it. Easy as that. And then, yeah, we're just doing a comparison here between the old and the new. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about Graph because we used Graph a little bit today to grab emails, and we saw how easy it was. But the whole point of Graph is to have the one API that rules all the APIs. Anything that has to do with your organizational data and services is available through Graph. Dynamics, CRM, user profiles, user accounts, OneDrive, anything that you need to do to interact with calendars, right? Everything that you need to do to interact with that data is available through one API. All you have to do is just say, I want to authenticate against Graph or grab a permission for Graph. And the user needs to consent. And once they consent, your app can access all that information. A very good example of Graph, because sometimes it's hard to put into context, is every time you go into Outlook to type an email to your colleagues or someone else, Outlook will try to be clever and say, you usually work with these 10 people. I'm going to grab them for you and put them at the top of your list. And then you decide if you want to use them. That means that if I am sending an email to JP, which is my partner in crime, I don't have to even search for him. I go to Outlook, I go to the to field, and the first name that pops up is JP. So Outlook does a graph call to an endpoint called people, and that endpoint returns that result. And you can filter, you can do some more advanced stuff. And I love Graph because it can give you a lot of, as I said, it's the one API that gives you access to everything. It also allows you to do a lot of admin things, especially in Azure Active Directory and B2C, the B2C being behind the scenes, allows you to actually admin and control how Azure Active Directory is set up and do a lot of automation through Graph. And the easiest way to play around with it is using the Graph Explorer. So if you've never seen the Graph Explorer before, then you're missing out because this is the best tool ever. So ak.ms and then G is the Graph Explorer. I think my browser is listening to me. And you can use it without authenticating, so you don't have to sign in, but it already knew that I was signed in and said, I'm going to use that account. In fact, this is a prime example of using single sign-on for something. So this is single sign-on in action. And you can grab your profile. And, you know, up here it tells you what the request looks like. And then down here you can see the response. So this is the JSON payload that comes back. But check this out. Did you know they can actually get the code that does all that for you? So here, you know, it grabs me, and then I can grab the object, and you know, if your manager says go and pull the data for, let's say, we talked about people, so let's pull people, right? People I work with. So the endpoint is people up here. Let me make this bigger so you can see it. People, right? And then it pulls the people, and then you can see, obviously, this is random people from my test tenant, so they're not real. There you go, company, so certain people. I think down here they have there you go, Diego, right? So that means that if I had to implement that in code, it will give me the code snippet here. I don't have to do any hard work. It just gives me everything I need. And then the auth provider you need to provide. But it's great because that's how you can test things, and then you can go and change things. Like you can do a select. You can do select and say I only want to get the company name, right? So if I run this, it will come back. In fact, we'll see the data here, right? It's filtered, but the code also filters as well. So this is super awesome. So you don't have to do any hard work when you work with Graph. This is the best way to do it. So you authenticate against your tenant using the right account, and then you start doing your queries. You can even do post and put and patch and delete, and it shows you what you can do. In fact, many times when I have to reverse engineer my .NET code, I will come and do it here and then take that code from here and write the code that way. So you didn't hear it from me, but this is the way to be a superstar by not doing a lot of work. And let's see here. So let's go back to our slides. I don't think I have anything else left. The last thing I have is obviously, if you enjoyed what we talked about today, and if you want to learn more about secured identity, then I would urge you to join us at the 4to5 show and learn with us. Ask questions, ask live, tell us what your challenges are. And we also have a fantastic Discord community. Where do I put the Discord community? Let's see. You know what? I'm going to put it on LinkedIn. So it's aka.ms, 4to5. So, and the Discord is also fantastic because you can get direct access to us, the engineering team, and other like-minded people that can help you with your identity stuff. And Azure and security. Send this. And yeah. If you want to get access to our YouTube as well, it's 4to5 show YouTube, where you can find all those videos that we've shown before, building things for, you know, sometimes the developers will come on Discord and ask something, and then we'll use that as a topic for upcoming streams. So you can be the focus of one of our upcoming streams. How about that? So there you go. I mean, hopefully walking out from this session today, and that was my goal, is to know that you shouldn't be writing your own identity systems, and that you have a way to do that easily, especially in .NET with Microsoft Identity. It's a few lines of code and off you go. Any questions?
Okay, any questions? Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so while we're waiting for questions, I am going to run a Blazor example. And we have a Blazor solution that is using WASM, and there's an API that drives the front end. And
Come on. Okay, so there's a question.
Uh-huh.
Okay, just a minute, please. Okay, so come and sit
No
here.
worries.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Yeah, hi. My question is about the password. When you started, you were trying to give us an advice about this software that gives out your password. It's not always that you're going to remember the passwords that you'll be using. So I was just thinking about it. Basically, that means you don't have access to your passwords. This software gives or predicts passwords for you. And
Yep.
is it that you have an authenticator that when you log in, an authenticator, you get these codes on your phone or something before you have access to your yeah, or something like that. Because I was thinking of if that software has access to everything, that means basically you don't have access to them because anything can happen.
You mean about Bitwarden, right? The one I showed on the
Yeah.
app? Yeah. So you can choose how you store the data. They have a hosted service that they manage your data for you, or you can decide to store your data locally, so you don't have to share the data with them. So it creates a local database of that. Right now, I think you can also use OneDrive as the backup solution. So the idea there is that you don't give them your passwords. They you store them where you want. But I see your point. I think 1Password was like that as well in the past, and then they changed it to a hosted only solution where you had to use their database or the backend services to store those. And that made me get off their platform because I lost control of where my data was, right? So they, like, technically they don't have access, right? Because you encrypt your keys and your database with your own password. So you have a master password to access these. They're not available all the time. But I see your point, and you're absolutely right. It is one of these challenges.
Thank you.
And while we're answering these, I got the API up and running, and now I have my Blazor app starting up. So I'll just show you how I'm using B2C for this example. So instead of using organizational accounts, we're going to use B2C with my Blazor WASM application. There you go. So right now it's not signed in. It says you need to go and sign in. And you see it's very different, right? It's distinctly different to my previous setup. This is B2C actually, so I'm going to use my Outlook account. Hopefully I remember how to sign in. And I can sign in here. Even Bitwarden tries to be clever. And there you go. I've signed in with my B2C account, right? So this is an external account. It's not part of Azure AD. It's Azure Active Directory B2C. And then in here, in the fetch data, I am actually grabbing a token. Oh, something happened. I haven't used this app in a while, so it could be that something is broken. But let's see, F2 this one. See, it's actually a live thing. Status code 403, forbidden. You know what? I think I was messing around with the permissions. So sometimes I do that to prove that if you don't have, so 403 came from the API. So just to show you what I mean. In my API, I have a scope. And yes, see exactly what I was expecting. So when I sign in with my account, and then I say, go and grab me an access token for my API. And then in my API, let me open another window. We'll see how that fails. Just to show you, it's nice to sometimes fail so you can demo that, right? So CD projects and then Blazor, too many Blazor solutions as you can see, playing around, CD API. And then in my API, I can do code. So let's see the code. And let's see why we go to 403. So remember what I said, when we call our APIs, we need to make it securely. We want to ensure that anything calling our API has an access token and that this access token has the right scopes. So in our program, we wire everything up. This is .NET 5, so it doesn't have top level statements. Sorry, startup. So here you see we have add Microsoft Identity.Web API, right? And then in our controller, what we're saying here is I want any call that comes in to be authorized, so nobody can call without an access token. But also inside my API action, I want to check for the required scope. Now, when I acquire a token from Azure Active Directory, the actual scope or the permission is access as user. But I changed it to access as user too, just to simulate a 403. So what happened is I passed the token, which authenticated successfully the user. I passed the middleware. So this got called and this passed. And then when I came to my controller, I can be a lot more fine-tuned and say, in order to call this action, you need to have this specific permission. And because I changed the permission to 2, he said, well, you don't have the right scope. Your token actually contains the access as user. And the error that we saw in here actually tells that the scope or scope claim does not contain scopes access as user 2, because my token only had access as user. So this is a nice way to simulate failure and that your authorization works in your API. And I left it there and then I forgot about it. So when we got the error message, that's what happened. But F12, you can quickly see what happens, and then you can go and investigate. Well, that's it. Blazor works as well, and everything works, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to write secure apps. So hopefully you learned that today. And thank you again for having me.
Yes, it's been very insightful section and very interactive. In fact, there are a lot of stuff being tested here right now. So yes. I think attendees, we have the senior most here. So kindly come with your questions. I think we have some few time for him to address. I think it's been very hands-on. It's been very interactive as well. There was a question coming to mind in terms of this new kind of the password thing that hashes. Yes, I was like, okay, so let's say you visit a Facebook site and you have your Facebook password stored in that kind of vault for you.
Yep.
So does it pop up from your browser and say maybe, okay, autofill with your password stored in that kind of application? Or like how does it work in terms of that?
It depends on how you want to use it. On my phone, I can actually, like on iOS, for example, when you go to fill in fields to sign in or sign up, it comes up, there's an integration with the keyboard, so you can say passwords at the very top, and then it can either autofill or it can auto-generate passwords for you. So if you've already have an account for that website, it will actually find the right one and then autofill it. I tend to be a little bit more explicit. I don't want it to do it for me. I want it to do it when I choose it to do it, right? I don't want it to automatically pop up and say, oh, I've got this. But if I go to Azure Active Directory, because that's a great question. So if I go back to Azure AD that we were playing around with before. So is it this one or this one? I think it's this one, right? So if I, let's see, Microsoft platform. So where did I sign in? So if I come here on the demo, sign out, right? Oh no, it wasn't the Azure Active Directory. Where is my Azure Active Directory? Yeah, ad.portal.azure.ad. So it doesn't remember which one. So let's say this. And then, you know what? If I come here, see the three at the very top? It says, oh, I've got these options for you if you want to use, because the login.live.com is consistent across these 4, but I don't want to. So I want to say, you know what? I need to use my CMatchCast domain. And then here, it shows that account, right? Yes, you can select which one you want to use. And you can see I have a lot of information there. But the nice thing is that it will either pop up, and then if I create a new account, I got prompted before. Remember how it prompted me up here? It says, hey, do you want me to actually retain that information for the next time? And then it stores everything for you, so you don't have to worry about it.
You don't have to worry about it. Definitely.
Yeah, I would say a password manager is probably the second thing that you need to take out from today's session. Do not create your own password and user databases, and then please use a password manager for everything else.
Wow, awesome. Yes, it's been very awesome presentation. Attendees, do you have some questions to ask? Okay, Joseph, kindly unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, so if we wanted to combine both the B2C and the other one for Azure AD, so
yep.
how can you combine both of them so that now you can either sign in using your Microsoft account, or if you don't have that, you can log in with your personal identity?
That is a great question, and this is something that it's a very common scenario. So, for example, let's say Nike, right? Nike might have all the Nike employees that need to sign in to the portal, and then they might also have external people that want to sign in through the same portal, right? So I can come as a customer and I can come as an admin to the same portal. Let's say the admin manages all the uploads for the new shoes, but the customer goes there to buy the shoes, right? So for that to happen, the easiest way to do it is to use B2C as the single entry point, and then use Azure Active Directory as one of the identity providers. Remember how we said that in B2C, you can use username and password, so I can sign in with my Outlook account. You can use your social media accounts. You can use Twitter or Gmail to sign in, but you can also use Azure Active Directory, or you can use other things like AWS or Twitch, or even Auth0 can become an identity provider to B2C. So B2C becomes the single entry point, and then depending on which account you need to use, you select them. In fact, I don't think I've shown it before, but if we jump into portal, I'll show you how that experience looks like. And then I don't have one with obviously Azure Active Directory as the identity provider, but I will simulate how that would look and feel. But it's totally doable. The only challenge there is that the tokens are issued by B2C. They're not issued by Azure Active Directory. So because you authenticate to Azure Active Directory, then you come back to B2C, and then B2C is the one that will issue the tokens to your application. But you should still have access to everything you need. So yes, I need to authenticate. And then now I'm inside my B2C tenant. And here we can play with the sign-in policies. So if I go into my user flows, and I think it's this one that has multiple providers. No, this is not this one. It is this one. So this one has multiple identity providers, and then I can run the flow. And then I can choose one, let's say this one. No access tokens, which is great. Run user flow. So the sign in, you can see here, has Twitch, Twitter, Google. I can also have Azure Active Directory down here. And when you click on one of them, it actually tries to sign in with your account. So here it says, oh, do you want to authorize? Yes, I want. So I'm signing into to Twitter, and it will take me back to B2C, and then B2C will issue the token. And then you'll notice that in here it says the identity provider is Twitter, right? So the token came from the issuer is my B2C, but the identity provider that actually authenticates the user is here, and that can be an Azure Active Directory identity provider as well. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool.
Nice one. Any other further questions? Okay, so I think it's been very informative, and I mean, you can try, but I think that the 425 show is something that all developers must bookmark that site on YouTube and stuff, because I actually found it when I was trying to get you to speak on this event, and I've subscribed to it as well. So, I mean, we are all heading towards that show. I mean, it's cool. I watched some trailer and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed it. So, yes, any other questions? We have few time for Christos to stay around and end the show as well. So, is there any other questions you would like to ask Christos? He's all yours today, so we have to.
All yours for one day. I mean, I can always come back, right? There's so many things to cover about identity.
Yes,
like, you know,
yes.
Eliminating secrets or doing DevOps securely and all these things. There's a whole new facade that we haven't covered, which goes beyond just authenticating users. Like, how do you access your resources without having to pass the connection strings, or accessing your Azure SQL without authenticating to Azure SQL? Can I use Azure Active Directory for that? Now you can, which is awesome. that also makes you think about how you implement your solutions in different security layers. It goes way beyond just signing in the users. That's the first entry point. You get through the door, but once you get through the door, what can you do as a user? We have authorization, we have accessing resources, and who can access resources on whose behalf, and what is the best way to do it. So always happy to come back and talk about these things as well.
Sure. And we have so many events upcoming, which we will definitely need your sections to educate us. I want to ask a question. Is it possible to combine multiple identity providers? Let's say, okay, where let's say from the client's perspective, let's say he has Azure Active Directory providing that identity, and let's say a third-party application that they really use their own kind of identity. So can that work?
Yes and no. Possibly, I would say, because Azure Active Directory allows you to import apps into Azure Active Directory, and as long as they work with SAML, then there is a way to do it. In some cases, you might have to manually import those users into Azure Active Directory using Graph, like you can bulk upload, or you can bulk, technically to be able to use Azure Active Directory, you need to have the users there. So let's say, random example, let's say you have Azure Active Directory and now you bought a tool like Slack, right? Now you don't want to have people to sign into Slack and then sign into something else and they have to remember and manage all these passwords. So there's a way to onboard Slack into Azure Active Directory and use single sign-on. And therefore, I'm using my Azure Active Directory account to sign in. We did that at Microsoft where we got licenses for Adobe. So now if I want to go and work with Premiere, I use my Microsoft account and that's a single sign-on. There's like a bit of weird, like a hop in between. I don't do anything, but Azure Active Directory sends some information to Adobe, and then Adobe says, "Oh, it seems like you're signing in with your Microsoft account. Cool." And then it gives me access, and as long as I have a license, I can use that. So that becomes a lot easier for enterprises to onboard users to new applications, and also minimize the strain of managing all the secrets and remembering passwords and messing up the password. So also, if I leave Microsoft, then my access to Adobe is automatically removed because I'm not part of that Active Directory anymore. So it also becomes easier for IT admins to centrally manage access to resources and access to everything else. But yeah, that is possible.
Okay, so where is the no side? Where you said this is the yes side? Where is the no side? Or it's actually a yes?
You mean for creating or
for having the two kind of different identity providers?
It depends. Again, it depends on whether they have been integrated in the right way, because certain apps may not have the ability to be integrated to Azure Active Directory, but these solutions or these services, these SaaS services, are becoming less and less these days. But if you write an app, like if you write your own web app that has username and passwords that you store somewhere in the database, and then suddenly you go to your company and say, we need to use this application because awesome. Let's say a timekeeping application, right? People clock in and clock out. I wrote it for my friends, and then now I want to bring it to my enterprise. For that scenario to work, you will need to change the authentication model to work with Azure Active Directory, and then onboard it into Azure AD. And then also, if you also want to keep all the previous users, you need to use Graph to upload all those users into your enterprise.
Oh, okay.
But it is possible. I mean, everything is possible given enough time and money.
That's true. Yes. Godfred, you had a question. I saw your hands raised. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Oh, yes. I have gotten the solution.
Please come again. Your voice, the sound. Okay. You mean
I had a question earlier. I had a question earlier concerning the Microsoft 365 developer program, but I visited the website and I found the solution right there.
There you go. Nice.
Awesome stuff.
Answering your own questions. She's the best.
Yes. So, I mean, I must say it has been indeed a very insightful section and event, right from speaker one to the last, but not the least, of course, Christos. We can say, I mean, from on behalf of the community, I mean, we've really enjoyed this section. I mean, I'm getting this kind of. We actually did a hybrid section, so there are other staff who came in person, not joining online. So they've really appreciated the section, and we would want to say a big thank you to you and the other speakers for sharing your weekend with us. It's been very insightful, and I mean, I wish it could go on and on and on and on, but I mean, time would not permit us. We have other subsequent events coming up. I don't know your schedule, but it will be definitely nice to host you again and again and again. Your section was very interactive. It was actionable, if I have to say that. So, yes, this is just the beginning, and we would be contacting you more and more to help us share the knowledge right from I mean the developer perspective and other areas of Microsoft. So today I want to say a big thank you to our speakers, and then if there's no more questions, maybe I can be wrapping up the show. Again, I would want to give, if you have anything to share with us, I think your handles, maybe you can share that on the screen again for people to pick it up. I'm very happy. Some are already even testing the 365 developer program. Yes, it will be shared on our handles as well. So in case any of the attendees miss that, they can get it. The recordings will be shared as well on all our platforms. I don't know if it will be okay to share your slide too with us.
Absolutely. So, that'll be my
yes.
pleasure to do. I mean, that's the whole point. And I think the, there you go. File. Share. So I will just add the link to LinkedIn and then you can share from there. Is that the best place, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
All right. So
there you go.
Yes. I've learned a lot today myself and the community as well. We are very much grateful for spending your time once again with us. So on behalf of the crew, Microsoft User Group Ghana crew, you should watch out. We have our summit coming this Saturday, Friday, and Saturday. I don't know your schedule, but I mean, we would have loved to have you present something around for us. But I mean,
hey, I can squeeze something there. Always something for the community. So yes, as long as the time is friendly on my zone, then I'm more than happy to jump in and talk about Azure and DevOps and whatever you want.
Yes. So we'll talk at the background, and we'll see what we can do together. Yes. So today I would like to say a big thank you to all our speakers. They've done a yeoman job, a great job. They've really engaged us well, giving us insights to these technologies, SDK, Agile functions, and what have you, ML, so machine learning and stuff like that. So we are very much equipped now. And I guess that anybody who missed this live can catch up with the online YouTube recordings as well. So yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being part of us today. Yes, and I would like to say a big thank you. This is the end of the show. We have 4 minutes to call it a day. So on behalf of the crew, once again, I will say a big thank you to all our speakers, and we appreciate their time. So thank you very much, Christos, and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, and thanks for organizing this. This is great. Thank you for everything you do for the community, and thanks for having me. And hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Sure.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
All right. Okay.
Bye.
Then, yes, it's a day. So we call it a wrap. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.